horses going in. Bob Baffert has another horse in, Improbable, at number 5. Now, look at Improbable, because Improbable was going off at about 5-1, but is also... Thank you, Manny.
As I turn east on Yamato Road, headed into Boca Raton, the sky doesn't look any more promising. But local rail fan Richard Smith is set up and waiting patiently on the old loading dock at Villa Rica Siding. We are rail fanning the Florida East Coast Main Line today, from Boca Raton to Fort Lauderdale, and wherever the action leads us. It isn't long before the first train gets here, a southbound Brightline commuter train. My experience shooting 50-mile-an-hour freights does not serve me well this morning. Camera too old, not enough light, shutter speed way too low. But it didn't matter. Richard had put me on a great spot. The trains kept coming. Sir Richard Branson has gotten in on this Brightline deal, paying the railroad for naming rights. So many, or all of these trains will someday soon carry Virgin Trains USA livery. By the time the third Brightline train arrived, so had Richard's friend, John Petito, along with the morning rain. As the rain came down heavier, here came what I was really looking for on this trip, an FEC LNG lash-up. That car in between the two engines is a specially built liquefied natural gas tender. The GEVO locomotives run on both diesel and LNG. FEC has 12 sets of them.
Okay, thanks. A little wet.
Just a little. That's Florida for you. Just another day in paradise.
That's all right.
The rain stopped, and here came another Brightline, southbound. It was 8:30 now, and Richard had to break off, so I followed John to a few hot spots on the way south. South Florida, from West Palm to Homestead, is one long, skinny town, bordered by the Seaboard Railroad on the west, the FEC in the middle, and the Atlantic Ocean on the east. There are people everywhere you go. John knew I like old stuff, so he took me to a park in downtown Deerfield Beach, where an old caboose was stuffed and mounted. I'm not sure if the color is correct on it, but the restorers did a nice job anyway. The building called Old Schoolhouse also caught my eye. It looked for the world like an old railroad station to me, but it isn't. It's an old schoolhouse. We drifted on south until we heard another Brightline on the radio. John led me into a favorite spot of his in Pompano. We set up on the sunny side. Then we were off to catch an FEC local. In this part of Broward, the FEC more or less traces the Dixie Highway, State Road 811. When the local hit a stop signal, we zipped ahead and into Oakland Park to wait on him.
All right, John, that train's holding down there. Now, why do you think he's got that red signal? What do you think is going on?
So that's FEC train 960, the Pompano local. It's going back home, back to the Fort Lauderdale yard. Call it a night. Right now it's got that red signal, probably because there's either a Brightline holding in that Fort Lauderdale Brightline station, or the bridge is timed out. So the Fort Lauderdale bridge times out. It's a Coast Guard rule. They're not allowed to have it down a certain number of minutes every hour. And so he's probably just holding on that. Once the bridge gets some time, they'll lower it, bring 960 back home.
Great.
After 5 minutes, the dispatcher turned him loose. Check out that advisory sign. Officials down here are doing everything they can to keep people out of the way of those fast Brightline trains. John led me into Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, a curve where the FEC swings to line up for the Fort Lauderdale drawbridge. And here came another Brightline.
All right, well, that was a cool spot right there. We got 2 Brightline trains. Those guys just run every hour down here. So if you just set yourself up, find yourself a good spot or a series of spots here on the FEC, you can get a bunch of those Brightline trains because they run hourly, and they're just beautiful, beautiful trains. They don't last very long, but beautiful.
Afterward, we made our way farther south. I didn't want to leave my truck up in Boca, and neither did John, so that's why we're in separate trucks. We're communicating with MURS radio, much easier than cell phones. John also knew I like bridges of all kinds, so our target was the Fort Lauderdale drawbridge. When the drawspan started down, we knew we'd see a fleet of crossings, and here they came. The canals of Fort Lauderdale are home to some of the most expensive luxury yachts in the world. Those who live up the river don't like being held up by drawbridges, so the railroad accommodates by trying to group trains across the bridge and limit the closures. The digital age negates the need for an on-site bridge tender. It's all done at the dispatcher's desk in Jacksonville now. The railroad still keeps a person on site whose title is Bridge Monitor, a pair of eyes on the bridge and someone to communicate with boat traffic on VHF radio, just in case. I had noticed on the radio that the dispatcher kept identifying himself as FDC, which stands for Florida Dispatch Company. West Palm FEC railfan Jim Kowalski educated me on this unique setup. Running commuter and regional trains on a freight railroad brings inherent conflicts. So FEC and Brightline created the Florida Dispatch Company. Each are 50% owners in FDC, and it does all of the dispatching and is responsible for making sure each company's priorities are maintained. After the freight train, we swung over to the seaboard side at Fort Lauderdale's Amtrak station. In a part of the world that is so developed, so crowded, and so modernized, it's kind of nice to see the old seaboard 1920s passenger station still standing and still in service. The northbound Silver Star soon arrived, the engineer a friend of John Petito, Aaron Carter. The Amtrak stations on the ex-seaboard South Florida rail corridor are among the nicest on the Silver Service route. Long, wide platforms that are well maintained, shelter for waiting riders, and close to road transport. After 7 minutes, Amtrak 92 left Fort Lauderdale for West Palm Beach, Tampa, and points north. John and I left for lunch. We ate and got right back to the tracks, heading north on I-95 into West Palm. We lit down at LANTANA, where Richard Smith rejoined us. The Lantana intermediate signals looked favorable for something coming. A yellow on the east main, a green on the west main, though I'm still not sure how to decipher them on this railroad. This is why Richard and John and a lot of FEC rail fans like Lantana, an unobstructed S-curve with a flat, off-street place to wait and shoot. We moved up to the north end of FEC's West Palm Beach Yard, 23rd Street crossing. Northbound 202 was coming, and the wind was kicking up from storms building over the Everglades. When you're zoomed all the way in, even the slightest camera shakes are magnified, and the wind gusts were doing the job. Another LNG power set, and FEC 411, a GP40-2, all hauling a very long FEC mixed freight. My thanks to Richard Smith of Boca Raton and John Petito of Delray Beach for a fantastic rail fanning day on the FEC. Check out their YouTube channels. There's a link to both of them in the description below this video. At milepost 297.9 on the Florida East Coast Railway, this is Danny Harmon, out.